Hello, this is Sebastian aka ScrubX for PokerVIP, and today I'm gonna play a bit of 16NL Zoom. I did choose this particular stake because I do think it's quite representative for like the whole micro-six environment. So I do think it just makes sense and it's quite logically to record my video in that pool. I will mainly focus on exploitative plays today, like how to exploit the Zoom pool, what the leaks of the population are, and I will also put my focus, if we get into such spots, on one particular thing which a lot of players seem to not acknowledge enough or like not focus on enough, which is rake. So we are playing a lot of rake while playing the micros or while playing poker in general, and I do think a lot of guys just kind of ignore what like effects those that has on like certain situations or like, for example, defending certain hands, right? So if I get into those situations, I will definitely address that and put my focus on that. I will also give some tips, hints, and tricks how to like gain even more edge while playing Zoom if I come across over certain situations that fit that. So without further introduction, let's jump right into the pool. Into the action and see if we can get into some interesting spots. So I'm not gonna show my HUD today because I do think it would get too messy and all. But if I will do certain things because of certain HUD sets, I will address that. Here we could bluff forward, but I don't really have a big incentive to do so. He's not getting too out of line over a smallish sample. Light blue means recreational, deep blue means fish or station. White means, or like gray rather, means rake. Orange means rake. Red means aggressive. Purple means whale. But if I will come across over certain player types, I will address that again. Yeah. If it's of importance. Usually most players are gonna be tagged as recreationals because most of the pool are recreationals. Like, at certain times it's like 2/3 of the pool being 1 or 2 tablers, which most 1 or 2 tablers are recreationals. Oh, that's a kind of sweet flop. We're gonna start by c-betting. Like, we can bet 1/3, we can bet large, or we can bet half pot. I'm just gonna choose to bet half pot. If I bet 1/3, I'm not thrilled to get floated super wide with my hand. I do gain a lot from, like, fold equity. Just gonna check turn, of course. He's never gonna fold a boat. We can make him fold certain, like, higher clubs, but we do block those as well. So we're just gonna check fold this hand. He usually just has a boat there, and we are drawing pretty slim. Obviously a pretty bad turn overall. I mean, at the same time, it's kind of easy to play, so not too sad about it. Kind of easy open. On this flop, we can go either way. We can check some weak ace axes to induce like him stabbing kind of wide. With this relatively high ace, I'm gonna start by betting around half pot. Trying to get called by a jack, weaker ace, some gutters. Probably gonna check somewhere along the line. Right here, I'm gonna start by betting kind of small, trying to get him off some ace-2 type, ace-3 type of hands. We do block some jack X's. We do have the range advantage. Here we're gonna call versus a recreational. This is not gonna be insanely profitable, I would say, versus a 3x open. He snap calls. Once he snap calls flop and snap calls turn, I doubt he's gonna fold river. I think he has a jack most of the time, or a hand that's probably gonna call us down. So I'm actually gonna give this one up. And he has the 6-8 for a straight, river straight. So I did save some money there. Here we're gonna just call and probably fold somewhere along the line. This is also not really a break turn, as king jacks and king queens are not gonna fire most of the time. They're gonna check most of the time. His queen jacks do get there. So once he checks, I do feel kind of confident that I have the best hand. He could still check some ace queen, ace jack, ace 8, ace 9 top of hands. At the same time, I do think he quite often has hand like king queen or like king jack. And he's a recreational, so what I will do is value bet my hand. Here I'm gonna check back the ace 2s. Yeah. Gonna Kind of straightforward, I would say. On this turn, I'm just gonna fold my hand. Yeah, I'm sometimes folding the best hand. At the same time, if he has a draw like Queen 9 with like 1 spade, he has a bunch of outs to beat my hand, and he can just barrel on the river. And I'm not gonna call 3 streets there. The King Queen hand, we could follow through on the river, but once he snap calls, I do think that's like quite big of a timing tell. Most of the time. I mean, this time he just had it. I mean, even a hand that shouldn't really snap call the turn, I think. We actually were value betting, which is kind of insane. For what it's worth, firing river is not going to be awful because there are certainly certain hands in this range like 7-8 of hearts, 7-6 of hearts that would probably fold river. Or hands like 10-9 which probably fold river, though I can't really say that with high confidence. At the same time, I do think he quite often has a jack, and I don't think a jack is really ever folding. And I'm not really interested in trying to make someone fold the top pair type of hand. Yep. That's kind of the gist of it. Here, pretty awful hand, just gonna fold to the 3-bet, quite happily. While we are not having a lot of action, so, I mean, it's kind of easy how we should counter like the high rake. It's basically by just not defending as many hands, not playing as many hands, because imagine a hand has a win rate of like 1 BB per 100. If the rake is quite high, like if it has a win rate for 1 BB per 100 without rake, with rake, it's obviously not gonna have a win rate. You can make the argument that at the micro stakes, players are generally worse and your win rate will generally be higher. At the same time, the rake is quite high. 6.5 or 7 or 8 BB per 100 is pretty high. You all know what's also high? My feelings if I see this hand. Ho! Give me some action. Let's give me some good old action. Quite obviously he's gonna fold it decent bit of the time. Let's focus on this hand, because it's actually quite dynamic texture. He's leading, so it's kind of tempting to raise him right here and right now already. There are not a ton of mate hands I'm scared of. 4-5 shouldn't be really in his range. I don't really think sets are generally leading here. I'm just gonna check how many tables he's playing. He's playing 1 table, so more than likely recreational. So I'm gonna raise mine for value right now, right here and now. I want to raise to about this sizing, because then I can quite comfortably shove turn if he calls on bricks. And he folds. So we can kind of go into that hand for a second. After we played the pocket kings, because we just run like God. Guy is tagged as a fish. Sadly doesn't open. Those guys are tagged as recreationals. Let's see if we can get some dice. On this texture with this hand, it's a quite straightforward check back. Probably gonna call 1 street along the line. Really a lot of draws out there. Can't really fold my pocket kings. He still has a lot of ace x's which beat me. Those will usually check on river quite a bit. Like for example, ace 3 of offsuited won't bet this. Okay, that's quite easy, just fold. So about the aces hand. So there are different arguments you can raise. Like if he's like the speary type of player, you kind of want to call and let him spaz. At the same time, I would much rather do that with the aces with a heart, because then I'm not as afraid of like turning a heart, and yeah. And with the aces with the heart, I'm also blocking some of the hands I can get value by raising. With the aces no heart, I really want to raise. I do think a recreation is probably going to go broke with jacks 10s most of the time. At the same time, if he has a draw, I do want to get the value mainly, and yeah, I think it's a quite straightforward raise there. The texture kind of seems bad because there are a lot of low cards. At the same time, it's not that bad because there really aren't a lot of like 2-pair type of hands like 9-5, 9-4, 4-5 are not really in his range. Like 4-5 maybe, but probably not. So if the texture is like 9-7-8 for instance, I would just flat because that texture is just like way worse than this one. And jump right back into the action. By the way, that's one of the tips I can instantly advise you to do is if like one big pot is brewing, you definitely want to sit out on the other hands and just focus on the big pot. Gain the maximum like win rate out of the big pot. And yeah, this will like reduce your volume overall, but it will certainly help to focus on like the really large pots because, well, they will be really large and the decisions in them will like affect a lot of BBs. So I want to have my maximum focus on those big spots. On this river versus the fish, I'm not going to fold my hand. I'm going to value bet quite happily if he checks. I'm going to choose a middling sizing because I do want to get called by ace-high, and I'm not sure if ace-high calls a bigger bet than this. He just folds. He probably just has nothing. I don't think ace-high is folding at that point, especially not snap. We could start by betting turn, but I would rather do that with like a better queen than queen 10. And there's also, yeah, just a bit too weak to value bet. It's not outrageous to bet turn, but especially versus the fish, it's quite reasonable. Yeah. So what I was saying before is you generally want to just defend less hands because of the rake. You don't want to defend like if you have the feeling that a hand is like already inherently close, you probably just want to lean towards the folding side of the spectrum. We do turn the second nut or third nuts here. To recreationals, gonna lead an amount I do think is gonna get called by a lot of their hands. Right here we can we can bet 1/3. I'm just gonna check back sevens with a heart. Right here I'm just gonna, here's a recreational, he did snap call the turn. I generally don't think he has a ton of folds here, so I'm just gonna bet a middling, largish sizing. Right here I'm just gonna check down my flush and probably call or bet the river. He has a 10 and he's not gonna fold. So if we would want to bluff here, we would probably want to use an overbet sizing, or at least close to pot sizing. Here we're gonna just bet it. I mean, it's hard to get called by worse here. I do think we're like quite close to always ahead. So I'm gonna bet a really small sizing and trying to get called by something. And we do. And we did get called by a 4. And I don't think a 4 generally calls a bigger sizing than that. So, probably got maximum value. Yeah. And generally if you play Zoom, I mean this is like kind of like dependent on what type. Here we have a pretty easy check call on the flop. Well, aces again. You know that's my favorite hand. Thank you, PokerStars. Oh, he sizes up turn. So he delayed bets and sizes up turn and is tagged as a guy who's not bluffing a lot. Here we could make it 1 BP bigger because we're a bit deeper, but it's fine, I'm already going large. So I'm just gonna fold this hand actually on the turn. We need 29% versus 29% equity versus range to continue. Don't really think we have that a lot, so I'm just gonna fold. His snap bet, big sizing, overall seems pretty scary. Don't really beat any value, and my draw is pretty like bad. 2 payouts are tainted, and so on. I forgot what I was saying before. Okay. So we have the worst gutter in the history of gutters, so we're gonna just check. There's also a board I don't expect a ton of folds on. I will probably delete barrel somewhere. I'm gonna value 3-bet my 9s here, quite happily. If he 4-bets, theoretically we probably should peel and not shove. But given that the overall 4-bet tendencies of the population, we can just quite comfortably fold to a 4-bet there with pocket 9s. Versus certain players we could shove, versus other players we could peel. But overall, folding is gonna be the straightforward play there. Yeah. What I was saying before, like if you have a situation where you have like close defend with hand like 7-8 offsuited, like button opens to 2.5x, you have 7-8 offsuited in the big blind. You generally know that it's should be a defense, but just considering rake, it's just not going to be profitable. Or you would need a pretty weak player to make it profitable. Another effect of the rake is that we kinda don't want to see flops as much. So, this is kind of close-ish. I mean, his sizing is pretty large, so we have a pretty straightforward fold, I think, versus sizing. Generally, you don't want to really see a lot of flops because you don't pay rake pre-flop, so you want to take pots down pre-flop as much as possible, which makes us inclined to even 3-bet more. Also, people are overfolding versus 3-bets overall, as a general like population league. So if you have a decision to like cold call a hand like, let's say Queen Jack suited or 3-bet it, you generally want to tend to 3-bet it to just take it down pre. And some players do raise the argument that you shouldn't raise the button as wide and like small blinds as wide and generally steal as wide because of rake, because like some hands just get submerged by rake. I don't think that's true, because I do think one of the biggest population leagues, once again, is they are overfolding pre-flop. 2 3-bets and 2 steals overall. And that being said, one of their other biggest leagues is that they are not folding enough post-flop. That they are stations. Here we can 3-bet or call. I'm just gonna stick with the low variance approach. Well, we could 3-bet to not see a flop, to like not pay rake. At the same time, I don't want to get 4-bet, and I do think my hand plays well enough post-flop to take a flop versus a recreational. Keep his range kind of wide. I dominated a pretty big chunk of his range. Gonna call with my nut gutter here. Sometimes the best hand, of course. Can turn an ace. We just turn the nuts because, you know, sometimes you just run good. Oh, this is a great example of a hand that's definitely supposed to be a call. And for 2.2x, I do think it's still a call. I'm gonna raise my nuts here. For 2.2x, it's still going to be a defend in my book. But let's say you would have made it like 3x, then I do think this hand gets too submerged by rake and we can easily fold it. For nearly min, we still kind of have to call. But even folding here is not outrageous. I don't expect this to be hugely winning. So every 10 makes a straight. I do think only a 10 will kind of... I mean, we could just shove it here. So basically, we can either bet smallish, like around 10, and try to get called by like some 2 pairs and sets. I do think some better 2 pairs and sets would re-raise the turn. So I do think he will quite often have a 10 here, and I don't think he's ever going to fold a 10. So I'm actually just going to ship it in. And maybe make some really, really hero call with like a set or something. So just going to shove my nuts here. Sure, it's going to get a fold like quite often, right? And like ace king is not going to call me. Well, probably not. At the same time, I don't think he's ever folding a 10. He did tank a bit, which, I mean, I doubt he did fold a 10 after tanking for like 5 seconds. He probably did fold a hand like, it's hard to assess. Maybe hand like ace king is quite reasonable. I do think betting small there's also a viable option to get just called by those type of hands. At the same time, are they calling even a small bet? Probably if you bet 1/3. At the same time, there are definitely some 10x's in his range, right? You could definitely have like king 10 or whatever floats his boat, basically. I mean, you could just have 10 deuce of hearts for what, like, right? It's like if he opens it, he probably has it. And he's never gonna fold a 10. And basically, to make this not a shove, yeah, there have to be a lot of things happening to not make me want to shove there. Basically, he would need to call with like weaker hands quite often versus smaller sizings, which I don't know is really true on like a 4 straight. I do think some of his kings and queens, which probably get stationary on the river, probably re-raise the turn. So I do think this leads me to the conclusion that I like shoving them. And he did tank for 5 seconds, so he probably had like, I mean, he probably had like, as I said, aces or ace king, which I doubt are calling most bets. Sure, they might call a 1/3 bet. But for the times he does have a 10. And I don't, for what it's worth, I don't think he's going to raise a 10 on the river. Like, maybe he will raise a 10 if I bet small. You could make that argument, and it's like somewhat valid. At the same time, usually the tendency of those players are that they're just going to call and take like the passive approach. Once again, most players in this pool, or like in the microstakes in general, are of passive nature, but of stationary nature. Gonna just range 1/3 my... Just gonna bet a lot of my range here for 1/3. And I do have a decent bit of decent turns where I pick up equity and he raises, which is okay. Kind of weird, but sure. So most players, most recreationals are definitely stations, right? But they are passive stations. They are not gonna like just go apeshit and bluffing. Here we have a close-ish hand. We can open this, but it's pretty close and marginal. But he's a recreational, so I kind of play my hand. On this flop, I'm gonna start by checking. It's pretty dynamic texture. He has a lot of pretty good hands. I do want to let him step quite wide, and I have a pretty easy check call. So, our main aim, or the main way to beat recreational players in these pools is value bet a lot, value bet big, but don't bluff the fish. On this turn, he bets a value looking sizing. He can still bet his 10x's. I'm just gonna fold this rather marginal third pair hand. Definitely have some better continues there than that, and overall, I just think I'm beat too often. And even if he somewhere has a draw, which his sizing is not really representing, he still has a bunch of outs and can still bluff the river. Right here we can 1/3 this flop, or we can check. I'm gonna check in a three-way situation. We do turn a pretty decent turn. There still are a reasonable amount of one-heart hands in their range, so I don't want to bet too small to not allow them to realize the equity for a fitting price. So that's fine. With the station behind and the recreational going for a min open once, I'm gonna 3-bet this time. Yeah. On this flop, we can go kind of either way. With the ace-9 in particular, I'm gonna start by checking this hand versus the recreational. He's so far worth 250 hands, is also c-betting 75% and c-betting 100% versus missed c-bet. So I'm gonna call. Once again, let's focus on a rather big pot brewing here. Has a relatively good turn, less pocket sixes, less ace-6 suited if he has that in range. We do kind of play ace-queen effectively. So he snap checks it back, which is kind of odd. I don't expect a lot of bluffs by him on the river once he snap checks back turn. At the same time, what am I value betting against king? I'm gonna check. I do think we still chop here a reasonable amount if he bets. I mean, I can't fold this hand. Obviously, I'm quite, really rarely beat. And he could still bet his gutters. He could still bet some missed diamonds, and so on and so on. And he could just bet a chop, of course. Overall, hand played out quite standardly, I'd say. Could bet flop. Generally, I do want to bet a lot of my range on that texture, of course. At the same time, I definitely want to have some check calls. I would think my weakish ace-x's definitely make for a good check call there. Even though ace-9 is kind of on the verge of being a good ace almost. It kind of depends on whether he defends a hand like he did defend ace-7 suited. If he defends all his ace-x's, ace-9 obviously has more domination on that flop than if he only defends ace-10 plus. The min 3-bet, the recreational, we're gonna see a flop and we're probably not gonna fold because he bets one big blind. So I'm tempted to just raise my hand right now because I don't think I'm beat and I do think he can call me with worse hands. As simple as that, really. It really is as simple as that. Okay, he folds. I mean, if he folds in ace-jack, sure. We did just fold out some equity and I can live with that. Basically, I'm kind of treating his 1 BB lead as more of a check than really anything else. Just gonna check fold here in a 3-way situation. He also does pot it. He leads the king-egg texture. He is actually a 4-tabler, and this is a weird lead. His sizing is big. I kind of already want to fold my hand. At the same time, I will peel 1 street. He just snap bets it again. On a texture, I'm uncapped. I have a lot of king X's. I have so many better continues. I have 7, 8 of hearts which can continue. I'm just gonna fold this hand. Also blocking some bluffs. I mean, I'm just gonna give him already the bad rake tech for that. Maybe that's a bit too harsh on him, but leading that texture for a huge amount on a dry texture just seems pretty bad. He also did do something I wasn't agreeing with before, so yeah. There's that. So right here with the limp UTG, we're probably gonna isolate our hand because we have a pretty decent hand. To about 4 or 5 BBs, just gonna make it 4.5 BBs here. Value, protection. He snap calls me. On the ace-high texture, we kind of want to see with a lot of our range. Pocket jacks is a hand we can definitely check back on. Versus a rack, I'm going to start by range betting this board. There's definitely some value and some protection to be gained with pocket jacks. With the ace-9, I'm just going to go into check down mode. Oh! Card match. We did win $1. Sick. I'm just gonna go into check down mode. If I lose to ace 10 or ace jack, I'm a bit sad and I'm gonna cry if I go to sleep, but I can live with that. And he just checks down whatever hand he's gonna check down there. Ace 4. Makes some sense. So, queen jack off, we could open UTG. This table isn't looking in particular too weak, so I'm gonna just fold it. Yeah. Table full of recreationals. You can't really do a lot if the UTG opens with the queen jack. The king 9 suited. Definitely opening MP. Nit behind. 13-8 over 1.1k hands. One recreational behind. I could even open the send UTG, though I do think UTG it's kind of like break even marginal. Same with 6-5. Opening 6-5 on like a weaker table is certainly fine, but this table isn't looking too weak. I mean, flopping the nuts, basically, sure. Gonna start by betting like around half pot. I obviously do block a lot of continues, and yeah. I obviously have their hands crushed. If it was heads up, I would probably start by betting 1/3, but in a three-way situation, I'm gonna start by betting 4-5, cutoff, marginal, but I'm gonna open it because I like my 4-5 suited. Yeah. Heads up, I would probably bet 1/3 there with the king 9. Out of position, we are a bit deeper, which kind of helps this hand. We are still out of position at 5 high. Peeling is not going to be an insanely losing call here. At the same time, rake is high, and we are 5 high out of position. We're just gonna let this one go. Being deeper kind of helps that hand, though. Generally, if you're deeper, you can peel more 3-bets, and you can peel them more of like suited hands. More playability post and such. This guy has about 40 big blinds, and we have pocket 10s. So we have two options here. Oh, flop his head. Running like God, whatever. We can 4-bet get it in. If I want to 4-bet, I'm gonna just ship it. He leads this texture. I'm gonna choose to not slow play my hand because of like variety of bad turn cards. So I'm just gonna fast play my hand and raise it up. But here I can either call or just get it in pre. For 40 blinds in these positions with pocket 10s, I think it's close between calling and just getting it in. I think both are viable. I'm gonna elect to just get it in. And we do run into the kings. That's fine. For 40 blinds, as said, both options are quite viable there. With the pocket 7s, it obviously is not the most fun result to get a fold there, but he flats the SB, leads the board, which he can definitely lead on, and he's just gonna have a lot of continuous here, right? I do expect him to lead like pocket 8s, pocket 9s, which I do expect to call. Call my raise basically. And if I just flat, yeah, I give the UTG guy a chance to do something, but he's not gonna really go too crazy on this board anyways. I don't, like, there's a variety of kind of bad turn cards. If there was a flush draw, this would be a clear raise on the flop. Without a flush draw, I think you can make arguments for just flatting the hand. But I do think I want to raise it up here. Because, as I said, variety of, like, not all turns will, like, I'm not scared of being beat on a lot of turns, right? But I'm scared of losing action on some turns. And the recreational leads, basically I'm just going to value raise my hand. Because I don't think he's going to fold a lot once he leads into two guys. That's the gist of it. You have the pocket 10s. I mean, once again, we can flat pre. We can't really fold pre. For 40 blinds, he could just fold. Like, I don't think a normal 4-bet sizing is ever, like, an option here. I mean, it would be, like, 17, basically. So I'm just going to ship it in. If he's, like, ever folding ace-jack or something, that's a good result with our hand. And I mean, look at it. If I just flat, I'm gonna go broke on this board, more than likely, right? I mean, there's gonna be 14, 15 in the middle already, so we have an SPR of a bit more than 2, so it's gonna be hard to fold an overpair on that flop. And yeah. We are at about 30 minutes. For what it's worth, I wouldn't jam 9s there. I would jam ace-king there for sure. With ace, kings, and queens, I probably would choose a, like, exploitatively, I would probably choose a smaller 4-bit sizing to induce more calls by him. Yeah. But pocket 9s, I'm gonna just flat there. Or fold. Even folding's, nah, not gonna fold him. Here, this is like a marginal hand to defend, but versus 2.5x, I do think it's quite reasonable. He snap checkbacks flop. He just doesn't have anything here most of the time, so I'm just gonna step. And I might overbet river. He min 3 bets. We have a hand. We have 2 cards. It's min. I call. If he min bets the flop, I'm gonna see a turn. If he doesn't, I'm gonna fold. He checks, so I'm confused. I could start bluffing. Do I really want to bluff into a recreational? Okay, let's try. Pocket force UTG, marginal, could open, could fold. Do think this hand is probably breaking even. Let's open it. Do think the open in itself, or I do not think, I do kind of know so because I did check my database on it, is more or less breaking even. And it's supposed to be a break-even open, basically. On this texture, basically, it's thin to bet here, but I do gain a ton from protection, and I can definitely get some value by betting this sizing. Queen shouldn't be too scary. I'm just gonna go into check down mode, hope he checks down hand like ace jack high or something. If he bets, I'm gonna fold. He pots, and we fold. And if he had 9-10, nice hand. Deuces, just gonna fold. Gonna play until the next BB. Okay. So I do think we actually got into a lot of cool spots, and we ran quite hot overall. I do hope I could address some of the important things I was thinking about. If you have any further questions, like if you didn't understand anything I said, or have a question about a certain hand I played, just post them in the comments. I will answer every question there is. If you have general questions, also ask them. Even if you want to have a hand reviewed, just post it. If I have the time, I'm gonna review it for you. Yeah. So basically, what do we learn today? Be aware of rake. Don't defend a ton versus like opens, because rake is gonna submerge your hands and just gonna screw you over. Value bet a lot versus the recreationals. Value bet big versus the recreationals. Don't bluff into the fish. Do bluff into the ABC-ish racks though. Though we didn't get such a spot today, sadly. What was there else? Was there anything I forgot? I don't... I'm not sure. Anyways, I think that's about it. I hope you enjoyed it, and see you the next time. Bye bye.